Simon Rosenberg, Democratic strategist and author of Hopium Chronicles on Substack. A new AP poll shows that voters have a more favorable view of Vice President Harris than they do of Donald Trump. 50% of voters view Kamala Harris favorably, and only 38% of voters view Trump favorably. What do you make of the vice president's favorability numbers? Should we put stock in that?
Yeah, we should, because what we've seen in a lot of polling is that she's in positive territory on what's called favorables and unfavorables, faves and unfaves, as it's called in the business. And the conventional wisdom in political science and in politics in recent years is that we may never see a president or a presidential candidate ever get into positive territory again because of the polarization of the country. So this is a big deal. I mean, she's consistently now polling in positive territory. Governor Walz is also polling in positive territory. And Trump and Vance are significantly disliked now. And why does that matter? Because with undecided voters, people making up their mind, there's one candidate that is likable, that people, have good vibes about, and others that they don't. And so this will matter in the home stretch here.
Now, we're all focused on the blue wall states and the battleground states, but let's talk about Iowa. Donald Trump's lead in Iowa is shrinking. Among likely voters, Donald Trump leads Vice President Harris by just 4 points in a Des Moines Register poll. That same poll showed Trump leading Biden by 18 points in June. How do you read that poll? Is Iowa in play this election?
Listen, I think we're getting some wild data. I mean, the election is, the campaign got what they wanted out of the debate. They wanted this contrast between her strong, steady leadership and his extremism and his ugliness, and it changed the election. We've seen in the polling since the debate that she's gained a few points. We've got battleground states now, states outside the battleground where she's polling at Biden's numbers or even better in some cases, like in Iowa. And so the election has shifted. It's, this thing is slipping away from Trump, and we should feel good. We have a lot of work to do. But I'll tell you that this thing I'm really focused on right now is some of the polling you showed. We had very good polling in Pennsylvania this week. Also, the last 6 independent polls in North Carolina, she's either tied or ahead. Republicans have no map unless they win both of those states, and both of those are trending in the wrong direction for them.
Okay, so you say this election is slipping away from Trump. I want to raise a concern of mine, and that is, I am worried about a Bradley effect. And for the youngsters who are watching, the Bradley effect refers to Tom Bradley when he was running for mayor of Los Angeles. The polls, this was in the late 70s or early in the 80s.
A long time ago.
A long time ago. A long time ago, kids. And before Election Day, he was leading in the polls. We left out the key piece. He was African-American, would have been the first African-American mayor of Los Angeles. And on Election Day, he lost. And what we discovered was people said nice things and said they would support them to pollsters, but then got in the voting booth and did the opposite. Is there a concern of a Bradley effect facing Vice President Harris?
Well, I think the concern is what happened in 2016 and 2020, where there was a perception that Trump overperformed expectations in both elections. And I think that the campaign is being very mindful of this. I mean, we don't really know about whether or not this time Trump will overperform these public polls. The problem for Trump and the Republicans is that since Dobbs, they've been underperforming public polls. Trump underperformed in 19 of the 20 primary states, where he did worse in the actual vote than he did in polling. So what's been happening with the Republican Party since Dobbs, as what happened with the fascist parties in Europe and in France, is that when people have been going to vote, we've had the opposite of the Bradley effect, or maybe the Bradley effect in a different way, which is that Republicans have been, and independents have been not wanting to vote for the extremists. And so you saw in 2022 and in elections ever since Dobbs, we've continually overperformed public polling while they've underperformed. And I think the explanation for that is the inverse of what you said, which is that Republican and independent voters just don't want to pull the lever for the extremists, and they've been underperforming public polls. We're going to find out on Election Day, but I think it's far more likely, in my view, that this election performs the way all these other elections have been performing, and that we actually end up overperforming public expectations.